Welcome to Momentum Investing, property investing made easy. One of the world's top podcasts on property investing, bringing you the top experts in the field so you can learn firsthand what it takes to create passive income and take control over your financial future.
Hello, Momentum Investor, and welcome to the Momentum Investing Podcast. Have you ever done a refurb project? Maybe in one of your properties or in your own home, changed a kitchen or a bathroom? Have you ever noticed a project not going perfectly according to plan and according to budget? Yeah? Well, that is one of the most common complaints of property investors, is that you do all the due diligence, you do all the work, all the preparation, and then the refurb goes up by 10, 20%. The project is delayed by 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Well, we wanted to help you solve that problem. So I asked one of the top project managers in the entire United Kingdom, Michael Fuerst, to come on the Momentum Investing Podcast and share with you exactly how he makes sure that his projects go according to plan and according to the budget, which we love, right? So listen to this episode. It is a very, very powerful episode, and Michael shares a lot of the insider secrets of how a project manager works on making sure the projects go according to plan. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side.
So welcome to the Momentum Investing Podcast. We're here today with Michael Fuerst. Welcome,
Morning.
Michael. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, and great to be here.
Yeah.
How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Fantastic. That's right. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Well, we're really excited to have you here because a lot of the people in the community are working on developments. They're working on refurbs. So, developments from small to tiny. And you're my project manager, and obviously therefore one of the best in the entire UK. I'm so happy to have you on this call to kind of get some advice for our community on what can they do differently, what can they think about to make sure their projects go according to plan, according to budget.
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing to do is to get a good project manager.
Yeah. Like yourself, of course.
Like myself, of course. Because everything is about planning. The end of the day, a project, a building project, it's kind of like a military maneuver.
Right.
And if the army, you don't just send the army out the door without a bit of preparation. Anyone who knows anything about the way things work in the military world, it's all about preparation. Yeah. And any good military activity needs a lot of preparation. You've got to have all of your materials. Your troops have to be well fed, and they have to hit the ground with a very, very, very thorough plan, so that when when the action comes, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember actually the man who started me on my journey, Brian Tracy, always says, for every minute you spend on planning, you save 10 minutes on execution.
Sure. Well, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So let's dive in a little there. What do you need to do? So how do you plan out a project? What kind of process do you use to plan it out?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to look at sorry, I'm just
we're leaving the Wailing Wall.
Yeah, we're leaving the Wailing Wall. I thought, as long as we're talking about planning, that I would show you some we're back at the Wailing Wall, that I would show you some more ideas of planning, but but it's not. The technology is not as easy to use on a mobile phone as I thought it was.
No, it is what it is. But since most people are listening anyway, I think they're happy that we're not seeing something they don't see.
We'll stay at the Wailing Wall. Okay. Anyway, yep. So there we go. Okay, I'm back. Close. Okay, there we are, back at the Wailing Wall. So the first thing you've got to do is kind of like the desktop study. desktop study would be to look at all the issues that you that are out there in the statutory world. So you gather all the information. You need to look at your statutory services, gas, water, electricity. Is the building connected?
Yep.
Maybe the building's been disconnected, and you have to look at reconnecting the building. Or maybe the building is connected, and you need to understand what the supplies are.
Yep.
Are you putting an eight bedroom HMO into a house that's going to have 8 bathrooms, and it's got a tiny little 10 millimeter lead water supply that would never possibly feed 8 showers at once? I mean, this is a very big area to look at, and can be really disastrous. If you get a project finished and realize, oh, hey, I haven't put an adequate water supply into the project, and that's a big one. In fact, that was one of the challenges with it. Shimon and I faced. We took over somebody else's project where they had built a HMO with, I think it was 10 bedrooms. And the contractor, we left it. Well, the previous project manager and builder that we took the project over from hadn't even considered this.
Oh wow, yeah. So you all of a sudden walked into that whole problem and mess.
Exactly. So you've got a project where everything is basically finished. The walls are finished. All the walls are newly plastered. You've got carpets down. You've completely finished a project, and you have a situation where not more than 2 or 3 of your residents can take a shower at once.
Right.
So you can imagine that's a disaster for an HMO, because you have to. And again, this is part of the planning. You have to think, okay, what's my brief? Yeah. How is this property going to be used? So an HMO, or serviced accommodation, you have to be thinking everyone's going to take a shower at 8 a.m. in the morning before they go to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to make sure you've got a commercial size water supply in there that is going to support 10 people taking a shower at once. Yeah. And it's not just on the cold water side, but it's on the hot water side as well. So one combi boiler. So even though the property might be the size of a family home, but one combi
no longer is.
Yeah, which one combi boiler would heat a family home, but the usage is a commercial usage. So all of a sudden you jump from being, so again, you think it's just a big house. I'm just making an HMO. It'll be enough to kind of look at it like a house. But no, it's commercial. So what I really need is I can't use my little man with a van plumber who's going to put in a big combi boiler, and that'll be enough. I've got to get in a commercial plumber who's going to put in a commercial system, and it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different, and you've got to make sure, again, you've got to get a commercial size water supply put in, which again, you can't just get your man with a van to put in,
right?
Because they have to have special registration, special tickets. It takes, time to organize, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the kind of issue which just highlights the need for planning. So let's go back. We were talking about kind of doing our desktop survey here.
Yep.
Yeah. So first you look at your statutory services, gas, water, electric, and then you look at your planning.
Right.
You've been given a planning document. You need to go over this planning document and understand exactly what you need to do to satisfy it, because often planners will give you all kinds of conditions in their planning consent, which they can often be some real wangaroos in a planning document, especially depending on where the property is located. If it's in a conservation area or a listed building in the UK, which is like a heritage designation. So you might need special windows, you might need special permissions on materials. all of the things that you've thought about very carefully and discussed with your consultants, which leads us to our next stage, which is really, putting together your crew of consultants,
Right.
which, obviously, if there's planning permission, perhaps you've started your project without planning permission. So that would really be, the beginning of your journey with consultants, to bring in an architect.
We'll talk about one of our projects, obviously, that you're helping us on that has had has had a journey.
Yeah, has had a journey. Yes. Because, you think, oh, I've got planning permission. That's all there is to it. No, it's a big project. There's a lot more to it than just having planning permission. One of the first lessons I learned about consultants for the very beginning of my property career was architects are very good at designing things, but they aren't necessarily good at building things. So an architect can design something that can't be built.
Yeah. I've heard that from a building engineer. She explained to me that, the architects do the drawing and then we actually have to make it workable.
That's right. So which is, I think, one of the key things about who you choose as an architect, and choosing an architect that has a very practical and very, at the end of the day, we're in this for business. That we've got a property business here. We're not artists. We're not looking to create some great landmark or some artistic statement, or a property that's going to give us any kind of personal pleasure. It's a property that's going to make money. So we need consultants that have that mindset and that can look at the property from that perspective, and how to help us, first of all, design that is economically efficient and a design that's easy to build. So you've got to I think this is one of the things to have in mind when you're looking at the portfolio of an architect is, what kind of projects they've done. Have they done a lot of commercial projects that are very, frugal, or are they busy building, beautiful palaces?
Yeah. Are they always going after an award, or are they actually trying to make it profitable?
Exactly. That is the essential issue.
Right. All right. So once you've done the kind of looked over the plan for like gas, electric, and water, you've gone through the planning. What do I do now?
So again, so if you've got your planning, although having said all of that, and this is something I forgot to mention, that if you have the capability of doing if you have a good builder that you've been working with, that is part of your team, the best thing to do is, before you even buy a property, is to drag your builder along with you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's no one that knows building better than a builder. And again, especially a builder that has experience in commercial property. I mean, I work with a builder who he in and of itself is a property developer in his own right.
Right.
So he really does have a very good smell for what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. And not every property do you want to snap up. So it's good to have somebody at your side that can save you from serious pitfalls.
I like that what you say, that he's a developer himself. We're seeing that how important that is in every role. It's like, for example, our students, we introduce them to a mortgage broker who's also an investor. We obviously we work with you on the project management, who's also an investor. Have the builder also be an investor. It gives everyone just they have a deeper understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, rather than just looking at, mortgage brokers often just look at highest loan to value and lowest interest rate, but often it's the terms that determine it. And having someone who knows what you're talking about makes a huge difference.
That's right. Of course. Absolutely. Well, and today, especially, and especially in England, it's such a big property. It's like I think it's almost like the national pastime in the UK. So if you're not doing something in property, you're probably not really worth getting involved with.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're in the industry too. I mean, if you're a builder, not investing themselves, just doing the work for other people, they're obviously missing something, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's funny actually. I was visiting one of Shimon's properties yesterday, and there was a property next door was being sold, or it was a property next door was up for sale, and but it had sold recently, and I saw someone there who was looking at the property and I was having a chat with him, and I said, because I assumed he was looking at the property to be our prospective neighbor.
Yeah.
So I said, well, if you need anything, be in touch, whatever. And he said, he's no, I'm not renting this property. Are you kidding? I'm buying it.
Yeah.
That is the attitude in the UK. People don't like to rent; they want to buy.
Yeah.
Which having said that, our essential angle is for service accommodation, which is a whole different kind of.
Right. Yeah. Well, we love service accommodation, obviously, and
Yeah.
I should mention when you talk about Shimon, obviously you're talking about Shimon Rudish, who was on episode 8 here on the podcast, just so everyone knows who we're talking about here, who's
That's
one
right.
of our business partners. So
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
All right,
Anyway,
so
where do we
what's
leave?
the next step? What do I do now?
Okay, so now that you have your planning and you have your planning, you've gotten your structural engineer in if necessary to look at the project, and you've lined up all of your statutory services, which again can take time as well, because and this is something that is very important to get rolling as early as possible. Statutory services, because they can take months.
Right.
It's possible to have a situation where you put in an order for a new electrical supply at the beginning of a project, and it's only being connected at the very end.
Yeah, no, one of our students actually had that they bought a property, and then when they started we said it needed a little structural work. And when they dug down, they saw that the council actually hadn't attached the water supply to the house.
Oh yeah.
And this hadn't come up before, but and this came up reasonably late in the project, so they had to put in a request to get that set up and hooked up. And it did take 6 weeks before they just came and,
Yeah, well, that's pretty quick, actually. So you're doing well to get the water board out within 6 weeks. But that's a good point you're mentioning there as well, that often you'll find, especially with water and especially with homes in the UK, that water used to be, water has come a long way. It's become much more sophisticated water supply in the UK. Now, everywhere everywhere has a proper company, and and everything's billed and metered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But there was a time when water was supplied by the local councils, and it was a much more, maybe it was part of your council tax bill, or it was a much more kind of communal supply. And so what would happen is you might like give it a long terrace of houses, and you might have one water supply coming in off the road,
Right.
and then kind of linking all the buildings together. So each individual house might not have its own independent water supply.
Right.
Yeah. And so what happens is you find, you buy this property, and let's say that supply is adequate to your needs. You get all the way and you just say, well, I'm connected, and you get all the way to the end of the project, and you go to remortgage the property, and your solicitor says, okay, can you give us proof that you're connected to water and sewer? And you're like, well, what do you mean proof? I'm connected. You want me to take the photograph? No. We need a bill. We need a bill from the, and you called up your local water supplier, and they're like, you're not on our database.
Right.
Yeah. Because you're part of this kind of system that's existed for 80 or 90 years.
Right.
And because no one has ever bothered, none of these houses have changed hands in the past 50 or 60 years. So no one's really dealt with it. And you just had your water and, no one,
No one thought of it because it wasn't an issue.
Exactly. It wasn't an issue. Whereas all of a sudden now that you're selling the property or just remortgaging the property, because the banks will put the property under a microscope when they remortgage it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is one of the biggest reasons, and I should have mentioned it at the beginning when we were talking about preparation, is that really you should be thinking from day one that I need to have everything together in my file. I need to be building up a suite of documentation. So when I get to the end of the project, I've got everything I need to make the banks happy to give me finance or whatever I need on the project or to sell the project.
Yeah.
So obviously that water and sewer connection is important.
It's interesting though how you compare that, because that's how we actually run it in Sweden. It's all communal, and it's all like water and sewage. That's nothing any of us ever think about over here. So for a foreign investor, I think we wouldn't understand the question naturally from a bank, which is why it's so good that you've described it here, because for us it just is, as you say, I can take a picture.
Exactly. Well, I think, and again, I mean, I've only been in the UK since 2000, obviously. So, having grown up in the States, but I think that there are a lot of people who grown up in the UK, and it was different when they were younger, and they don't understand that it has really changed here. And now, each area does have its own company which provides water and sewer services, and so that has to be sorted out.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
made that preparation now. So you've gone through these preparation things, and you're ready to get started. Well, what Napoleon Bonaparte always said is, planning's important, but once the battle begins, the plan goes out the window. And we see this occasionally in property deals. Things don't always go according to that plan. What do we do to kind of salvage when things start going sideways?
Well, I mean, again, there's no substitute for constantly being on your toes, which again is why it's important to have a good project manager who is on top of your project, especially if you're an overseas property investor. So, you're relying on that project manager to be your eyes and ears and to be constantly, keeping an eye on the property.
Absolutely. It's a key part. And I want to add, even on small projects, you need to have a project manager who's just in charge of coordinating the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, I've had people kind of like suggest to me, well, let's say you get a really good builder. You got a really, really trustworthy builder you've worked with for a long time. Excuse me. And you feel you can trust him implicitly. So you think, what do I need to, at least for that stage, once I instruct a builder, I agree a contract, we've got all of our drawings, our whole scope of works of what needs to be done by the builder. And once that's all agreed, why do we need a project manager going forward? Yeah. So at the end of the day, first of all, the simple reality of two eyes are better than one.
Exactly.
And there are always going to be things that the project manager will see that the builder won't. Yeah. And once the builder starts, he's going to be kind of focused on, I just want to get in there, get the project finished as quickly as possible, because this is another interesting, thing that, a lot of times, a developer will get frustrated that it's taking time for a builder to finish a project. Yeah. The reality is, for most builders, the quicker they get in and out, the better for them.
Yeah.
The longer a builder is on a project, the more money it's costing them.
Oh, absolutely.
Because yeah, so the obviously their incentive really is to get in and out as quickly as possible. But what you want to make sure is that they don't miss anything as they're kind of steamrolling their way through, and especially any of these kind of little bits that wouldn't necessarily come up during a project. That, I mean, there's always going to be, especially if you're talking about something like a refurbishment, there are always going to be realities that come up during the project, which need to be kind of considered on the spot and considered as you go along. Things that you can't really plan in advance because, let's say you're taking an old building. The first stage is to strip it all out.
Yeah.
Strip out all the old interior walls, and it's only once you've stripped out all of that existing structure that you're able to understand what the underlying structure of the building is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can discover some surprises.
Well, that
like you've
happened
got
to
a
us
chimney
in a
breast.
project. Exactly that. We took down the kind of the roofing, the inside, the inner roof.
The ceiling.
And it turned out, yeah, thank you. Ceiling is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the electric was shot, which we
Sure.
had no idea of. And all of a sudden we had to pull in an electrician, and it cost us about £2,000 to fix. And we had no idea.
Yeah. Well, and especially that's a big one in the UK. I mean, with electrics, generally speaking, if a building hasn't been touched in 10 or 15 years, you can just bank on the fact that you will have to do total rewire.
Yeah.
because they change the regulations.
Right.
They actually I think it was in about maybe 2003 or 2004. They actually, you've got wires, in your electrical wiring. You've got three colors. You've got your brown, blue, and yellow.
Right.
So brown now is live and blue is neutral. Yeah.
Right.
It was the other way around.
Oh, they switched it.
They switched it.
Oh, right. Oh, that's just to make it confusing for people.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they use different colors. I can't remember exactly what the change was. But the point is basically is that, is if you have a property that was wired, if you have a property that's wired before 2000, forget it.
Right.
It's just, it all needs to be ripped out, and you need new electrics. And especially because, the regulations have changed as far as what they call they are ground. What do they call? I'm trying to remember the name for it. It's in addition to having circuit breakers on each circuit, which obviously interrupt the power flow to that particular circuit if there's kind of any issue. You also have what's an additional device which looks for ground faults.
Right.
And it kind of fault to the ground, to the grounding of the circuit. And those, those came in as well in the early 2000s. And, all of the sockets, you don't put them on the lighting circuits.
Right. But
you do have to have them on all of your, but again, and that's something, again, you can't imagine how much, how bad, some of the work could be, of what you're adopting. If you're taking over, you can have situations where a lighting circuit is mixed together with a small power circuit, which is a big no-no.
Yeah.
In UK regulations.
Right.
So you really, especially, I mean, this is, obviously it's only for your small, well, having said that, there's some big commercial jobs as well as big properties, big commercial properties. And you think, oh, everything's been done properly here. And
No, that's not always the case.
no, it's not, it basically you can't. There's a famous adage. Can't remember where did I learn this from? Can't remember. But if you take the word assume,
Right.
yeah. So you take what happens when you assume. You make it, so you take the letters. The first three letters ASS.
Yeah.
The second letter, then you have U,
Yeah.
and then you have ME.
Right.
So a person makes assumptions, they make an ass of themselves,
Yeah.
and they make an ass of the other party. So you mustn't assume anything. And that is really, and I think, again, this kind of goes back to the very beginning of the discussion,
Yeah.
and I've seen it, I've seen it with so many things. In fact, I think, Daniel, if you think about it, there's a certain conflict that we got tangentially involved in
Yeah.
with two people, and I think that the driving force of that conflict was assumptions
Yeah.
that were
Exactly.
made by various parties. And this is why it's so important to get things in writing, contracts. We're already kind of, okay, we've had our discussion here. We're already holding by, talking about builders, but obviously, before you have a builder on site, you've got to have your contract with that builder.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you've got to have everything in writing.
Yeah.
So when things go off the rails, you have something to look back at. I mean, generally speaking, I had a builder friend who once told me that, and this is someone who's dealt with, massive projects worth tens of millions of pounds. And he said that once, when he was preparing a contract, he opened the contract, because these big, serious jobs, they use serious contracts that are like 70, 80 pages long.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, most people don't read through them cover to cover, because most of it is just kind of your standard kind of language, kind of terms and conditions.
Yeah.
And it's really only the first few pages where you just change your various details to suit your particular project.
Yeah.
So this particular fellow who would put together he was the estimator. So that was part of his job, was to put together the building contract. And so he opens it to the middle of the document, and he draws in there a picture of a part of human anatomy.
No.
That was a bit rude. Yeah.
Oh,
And
no.
he said no one ever said a word.
Really? No one even saw the
Because
page.
no one saw it.
Oh, this is so bad, though.
Yeah.
There's probably something like that on like Facebook page 27 of the user agreement.
Exactly. Yeah. So he did it obviously just to make a point. But the reality is that for most contracts, that what will happen is everyone will, make a whole ceremony, everyone will sign their copy, and you'll put them into the desk drawer or wherever you put these kind of things into your filing cabinet, and you will forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And nine times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, you will never look at this document again.
Yeah.
And it will only be in those cases where things go off the rail, which hopefully, shouldn't be the norm, that you will pull that contract out and have to refer to it. Yeah. But really, the fact of the matter is, I have to say, having been in that position before, that way really lies madness, and even though
it's so much easier to agree when
yes.
you're friends than when you're in a disagreement and you don't like each other.
That's right. You really don't want to get into disputes. Disputes are just absolute, and again, if anyone does in that situation, happy to give advice. I've got a lot of
Yeah, well, we've been through. I'm actually going through some stuff like that right now in some negotiations with old partners that we're making an exit with, and it's always a work. It's a lot into it, but luckily we're finding an agreement, so that has actually been very nice. I'm pleasantly surprised over the dialogue,
yes.
So that's been nice.
Absolutely.
But we're actually coming up on our time, so I want to give you the chance to give one last nugget of wisdom here before we wrap up.
Last nugget of wisdom. Well, hmm. um, I think another important thing to say is that in the property world, and especially today, it's very easy to create. Um, it's very easy to create illusions.
Mm,
So, it's very easy for a person anyone can put together a beautiful CV.
yeah.
Anyone can big themselves up verbally, and anyone, there are people who, they say they could talk the hindquarters off a mule.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what's really, really important is digging into whatever you're talking about, whether it's an architect or an engineer or a builder, it's or a project manager as well. It's important to really dig in and really make sure that whoever you're dealing with is who they appear on the surface.
Yep.
And we have an adage in the Talmud that that a person is more important to do a lot and say a little.
Mm.
So, I mean, we're on a podcast here, so it's all about words, what we're doing here. But and it's not about actions, but it's important to, you've got to look into, you need to look into what has a person accomplished.
Yeah.
It's one thing to put together a CV,
Mm.
but it's another thing to actually have accomplishments, real accomplishments, and also making sure that those accomplishments are actually attached to that person. Because
Yeah.
I've seen CVs of people, and they'll put down all kinds of projects on a CV. Well, it turns out that they were just like one little tiny little cog in a wheel in a company involved in that project. And, but they put it on their CV, and you make, it sounds like they built the Brooklyn Bridge or the Shard or whatever it is, and the reality is no, they were an intern working for the building company. They were making coffee for the
Right. For the assistant of the architect.
exactly. Yeah. So no. Yeah. So you really have to there's no substitute for due diligence and really drilling down and making sure that people are who they say they are.
I love it. I think that's great. I think that's a great note to end on. We've learned a lot. We got to make sure that we do the proper planning of the project. We check our gas, electricity, water, that we make sure our planning is correct, that we got that online, and then once the project starts, that we're ready, light on our feet, and have a great project manager to help us, like
Yes.
yourself. So if anyone wants to reach out to you and connect with you, how do they reach you in the best possible way?
Well, the best thing to do is to contact me on my mobile number, or to send an email. I'm on I'm on all the typical platforms. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on. You can WhatsApp me. You can iMessage me. You can email me. I'm not going to try to spell out any of these numbers or
We can do,
or
if you want, we can
addresses.
add them in the show notes so people can go
Exactly.
to the show notes and get your details. So I'll add all the links there.
Fantastic. That's great, Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this, Michael. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate you being here, and I'll see you all soon.
Wow, wasn't that amazing, right? There is so much you can do to make sure that your projects go according to plan and according to budget, and a key part of it is having a quality project manager, which is why I use Michael for my larger projects, which has been very, very beneficial for me in my project journey. So I hope you make sure when you're doing a project, you have a good project manager, and take all the other advice that Michael gave you to heart and make sure that your projects go according to plan and according to budget. Now, for our next episode, I have a big surprise for you. We've gone all the way over to the United States to bring in one of the top property investors who works with a strategy that is famous, but very seldom used in the UK. A lot of people know about this strategy, but almost no one uses it. What is so exciting to me about this strategy, if used correctly, you can get properties without having to put any money in, without having any trouble with banks, and just getting around the whole problems that often come up in property deals. It is a way to create a huge benefit for the vendor, and obviously you as the buyer makes a huge profit. I asked Larry Fiore of the Real Estate Marathon podcast come on and share what he's done in the United States and what he sees that we could be doing in the United Kingdom when it comes to seller financing. Now, this is a very exciting strategy, and Larry shares exactly what he's been doing in the US to get deals without putting money in. And in his career, every single deal he's done has actually been a seller financing deal. So he's one of the most experienced property investors with this strategy. And I can tell you, if you master this strategy, you will have advantages over other investors like no other strategy around. I think this is a very underused strategy. Obviously, you have to understand it, you have to know it, you have to go through the legals. And once you have, you'll be able to do things that most investors, you'll be able to buy deals that most investors wouldn't even know how to negotiate or touch. So stay tuned for the next episode. It's coming out on Tuesday next week. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be hugely valuable. So stay tuned, and I'll see you there.